Hi! This is going to be a quick tutorial for how to make the twist headband, often sometimes called the turban headband. I'd like to begin by saying that I did not invent this method. It has been around for some time. Last year when I began making these, I watched numerous YouTube tutorial videos to find the best way to make these. They were all a little bit different, but the one that I found most helpful, that I took a helpful tip from, was a blog called I'll Show You Mine. So I wanted to give her credit for the tip that kind of changed the headband and made it a little bit better for me. So the only supplies that you will need for this project are your sewing machine and a rectangle of fabric. Now the measurements of the piece that I have here are 20 inches long. That will be the circumference around your head. So if you're making this headband for a child or a preteen, you may wish to reduce that number to 18 or 17. You can play around with it. Now the 9 inches is the width of the piece of fabric, and that will be the width of your headband. It will determine the width of your headband. So you can play around with that as well. 9 by 20 is the size that I like best. So you want to make sure that the stretch is running along the length of your fabric, as that will allow the headband to stretch around your head. So let's get started. The first step in the construction of our headband is to lay your rectangle of fabric out flat on the table, right side up. We are now going to fold it in half, lengthwise, right sides together, lining up the free edges of the fabric. We are now going to sew along this free edge using about a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a stretch stitch on your sewing machine, or you may use your serger. We now have our fabric sewn as a tube, right sides together, along the length. And we're going to turn it right side out. And again, lay it flat on the table. Now this time, we want the seam that we just created to be facing up and placed in the center of the headband. So smooth it out, and as well as you can, ensure that the seam is in the center of the headband. We are now going to flip the headband over so the seam is on the bottom, and then we're going to fold it in half lengthwise, lining up the short ends of our headband. So here we have the short ends lined up. Now I'm going to go slowly with this next step so that it's easy for you to follow. I'm going to take the top layer of the headband and move it to the right about 2 inches. So the bottom layer of the headband stays stationary and the top layer moves to the right about 2 inches. So that you have the center of your headband lined up and the seam of this headband stops at the fold here, and the seam of the bottom headband lines up with this fold. Now you have this little flap hanging off here, which you will want to fold behind, and you have the flap on this side that you will want to fold around the top. So now you have created a sandwich with your fabric that essentially looks like this, and they fit together. Now the next step is going to be to sew across this sandwich of fabric, sewing all of the layers together. You will do this with your sewing machine, and a straight stitch is fine for this. Many of the tutorials that I watched simply have you sew a straight stitch. The tip that I picked up from the blog I'll Show You Mine is that if you curve this stitch like a rainbow, then it helps the twist to lay more flat and attractive. So I'm going to begin here, sew up, across, and down with a straight stitch on my sewing machine. Once you've sewn the curved line of stitching to sew your sandwich of fabric together, you will need to clip away the excess fabric, leaving about 1/8 of an inch of fabric remaining, being careful not to clip through the stitches that you just made. So now when you open up your headband, you'll have that nice twist that hides your seam so that the back of the headband is flat and smooth, and you can wear your headband with the twist either in the front or the back, giving it a little bit more versatility. So I hope this tutorial was helpful for you, in the construction of your twist headband.